Welcome to the April 2022 We Stutter at Work webinar entitled Awkward Interactions in the Workplace for People who Stutter. There was an unfortunate error that had occurred at the beginning of the webinar, and the beginning of the webinar was not recorded. So I wanted to make this intro video for you in order to catch you up on what had occurred at the beginning of the webinar. I'm John Ontiveros, and I'm one of the co-leaders of the We Stutter at Work team, and I will also be your moderator for this panel discussion. I would like to begin by introducing our three panelists who are working professionals and who are also people who stutter. Their names are Annabelle Augustine, Ariel Malman, and Catherine Maroney. Annabelle works in the social work field as a youth case manager. Ariel is a marketing professional in the cybersecurity field, and Catherine is a scientific software engineer and operations engineer for NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Aside from the introductions, I began the webinar by asking the panel the first of my list of cool questions that I had prepared for them. The first question was, what makes a moment an awkward moment at work for you as a person who stutters? The first person to answer that or to give their response was Annabelle, and unfortunately her response was omitted due to the error that occurred at the beginning uh, of the webinar. The recording had started during Ariel's response, which is what you're about to see right now. You're going to see Ariel's response to that question and Catherine's response as well. Everything else is there in the webinar for you. So please watch on, and I really hope you enjoy the webinar and that you find it very informative. Enjoy.
Can tell that people don't know what to do when I'm struggling. And so I can sense them being uncomfortable, and I feel almost bad for making them feel uncomfortable. Um, and so that's a moment when I feel like there's both a loss of control. And if I'm having a particularly bad block where I have these like secondary behaviors, which include things like excessive eye blinking or jerking up my head, I feel very insecure about showing those because they're not like enjoyable to look at. It's not common. So I think for me, any moment can feel awkward in the workplace when I feel like my insecurities are on display and I'm not in control of the moment or how I present myself.
Mhm. Oh, wow, that was great, Ariel, and I can relate to that myself, so thank you.
Uh, 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 for for me, he, 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 it, 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 all, all, for, 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 oils down to, somehow be be being being treated did differently be be uh be be cause I stutter. Whether it's being talked over interrupted, n- not being being caught 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 called on to speak, and it doesn't make me feel awkward so much as it just really pisses me off.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and I can de definitely relate to that, myself as well. So thank you, Annabelle, Ariel, and Catherine, for your responses to that opening question. The next, and here is the next question. And once again, we're going to keep the same order, and at least for now, please. So once again, Annabelle, Ariel, and Catherine. Then my next question is, what is one of your most awkward moments at work so far as a person who stutters? And how did you handle that situation initially?
So for me, I think about 4 to 5 weeks ago, I was just having a really bad stuttering week. So I called a shelter concerning trying to obtain some information to see if my client would qualify. From the minute that I started the conversation, I was running out of breath because during that time there was um, there was a lot of pollen outside, and the weather was very bipolar. So my nose was really stuffy, and then I was not having the same breathing support that I usually have. So I was speaking to her, but I was running out of breath. But because she didn't say anything yet, I was continuing. But then the person was like, "Are you okay? Do you need me to call 911? Hello, is everything okay?" And then I tried to tell her everything is okay. I just stutter, and and then that I just need a few minutes, but she wouldn't allow me to speak. So because she just kept saying, "Do you need me to call someone? Should I get someone else on the phone?" I was like, "Ma'am, stop, please. I am trying to tell you that I stutter, which means that sometimes that I may block, repeat words, and speak slowly, but to please not speak for me. I am okay. I'm just having a really bad stuttering moment." And then she was like, "Oh, okay, thank you for letting me know." So I kind of lost some of my confidence during that time. But because when I did tell her what was going on, she was willing to just wait for me to speak. I started to be more comfortable in speaking, even when the whole conversation was just not as effective as I would have liked, but I was able to say what I wanted to say. But to date, that was my most awkward moment, because people don't usually say, "Are you hurt? Do you need me to call 911?" So I was scared that she was gonna call 911 if I wasn't able to just tell her, like, "Man, no, don't do this. Like, don't make it worse than it is right now." But yeah.
Oh, cool. Thank you, Annabelle.
Wow. Oh my, I can't even imagine if someone said that to me. I would have been like, no, I'm fine, but I'm just in shock that that was your response to think that I needed an ambulance. Wow.
uh,
That is crazy.
uh, I've uh, 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 I've 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 um, uh, I've interacted with uh, paramedics a few times. Uh, 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 and the first thing that I always says 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 is tell them um um uh, um uh, is that I stutter and this my this is my I no normal oh speech speech pa, pa, pattern and I'm not having a stroke right now.
Yeah.
I've always wondered if I were in like a like life or death situation and I had to like call an ambulance or something. I always wondered like how my speech would be
Mhm.
because I'd be like, of all times, that is not the moment to block. But um anyways, one of my most awkward moments was when it was like a couple weeks into my new job, which I started the fall right before the pandemic. So my company, we have these videos. They're called "It's Your Data" videos, we have this actor, like, small gig local guy that we pay, and he basically makes these like cute videos that show what could happen if a business doesn't protect their data. So it takes like complex situations and just presents them in a very simple, funny way. And people that have been working at my company have met this guy before. His name is Seth, and he occasionally comes to the office. So one day he came into the office shortly after I started, and I was like, "Oh, that's, the guy from the It's Your Data videos. That's cool." My boss was like, "Yeah, you should go up and introduce yourself." And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, like, I want to, but it's like really hard as a person who stutters to just walk up and do that." So she made it sound like she wanted me to go right then and there. So I walk down the hall, and he's already like kind of having a conversation with someone else, but they're wrapping it up. So I'm just kind of like staying there uncomfortably, like waiting until he's done so I can talk. And then he turns to me, and we both say hi. And then I go to introduce myself, and I struggle to get out my name. And he responds, and he's like, "It's okay. I'm just a regular guy who also makes videos for your company." And he was like completely serious. And I was like so surprised by his answer. Like, "Do you really think that I'm like that nervous to meet you and that I'm like fangirling over you?" And I was just like, "Oh, ha ha ha." And I just like awkwardly laughed it off. And the reason that that moment was so uncomfortable is because I don't like when people tell me how I am feeling, or like tell me how I should feel. I'm sure everyone here has had an instance where someone said like, "Oh, it's okay. Don't be nervous." And it's like, "Well, I'm not nervous. I'm just trying to speak." So that was just a really uncomfortable moment because he took it as very high self flattery, and I was like, "That's not it. That is not it at all, dude." But yeah, that was one of my most awkward moments.
Wow. Yeah. I really hate those moments myself. Like I really
Yeah,
like I really hate those moments where like you're once again all you're doing is trying to talk, or in this case all you're doing is just trying to introduce yourself, and yet this the individual you're speaking to just just automatically assumes that that you're really nervous for some reason, and especially this guy who once again he took it as a form of flattery when in actuality you were just simply trying to say your name. So
yeah.
yeah.
Uh, Male ego, anyone?
Maybe like a actor ego thing.
There
Yeah.
we go. Yeah, exactly. So go ahead, Catherine.
M- 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 a a a a few 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 we weeks back I was in a a a a me eating with the satellite I'd 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 management team representing my 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 particular subgroup, and 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 I was as as uh, was try, trying 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 to explain in something te- te- technical, and 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 block blocking very badly, and 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 one of the participants and 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 cut 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 me off, and this is Patches, everyone.
Hello, Patches.
Hi, Patches.
Okay, Patches, shoo, come on, scram. uh, uh, cut, cut, cut me off, and uh, uh, and uh, 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 and and told me that I didn't need to excuse me while I move a cat.
It's ironic that you're talking about being interrupted and then your cat keeps walking across your screen.
Yes. It told me that I did, didn't need need to fit 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 fit. So I got uh 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 re re really pissed off, and said it in a very stern voice voice oh, 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 voice voice, for God's sakes, be he be be pay patient, and just let let me finish. And he 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 actually he 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 uh 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 uh, he 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 shut shut up and did it let me he fi- 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 finish talking. uh, and where and I was younger, my I I D E D D D D E D E fall fall reaction would would to who who be 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 uh 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 ashamed, and now it just makes me mad.
Wow. I love your reaction to that and how you and how you handled that. I mean, it's unfortunate that it had to get to that point where it upsets you, right? I mean, that's never a good feeling. But I will always I love it. For me, I will always see not reacting with shame, and instead reacting with standing up for yourself as a victory. For me, it was always for a long time it was the opposite. Where if something that happened, I would more like say like, okay, I'll, and I wouldn't allow myself to finish. But it took a lot of work for me to overcome that and to not respond with shame, but, but instead respond with, in so many words, like you said, for God's sakes, let me finish what I have to say. So I love the way your story ended, or your example ended.
Yeah, uh, and this guy, I hasn't tried that trick since.
Ah, nice, very, very, very nice. So now we're going to abandon the order that we were going in with the panel, and instead I'm going to direct a few questions to specific members of the panel who represent different working environments. When it comes to virtual work environments, in-person interactions, and working one-on-one with clients. So I want to direct the first question to Ariel, who has a lot of experience working in person. And for those of us who might be going back into our in-person work environment as after having to have after after having to work in a remote i- i- environment, or just to anybody entering into in a new in-person work environment in general. My question for you, Ariel, is what can make returning to an in-person work environment most difficult and uncomfortable for a, a person who stutters? And in your experience, how what have you done to overcome or to mitigate those things?
That's a great question. I think, well, speaking to someone face to face when you haven't had those kind of interactions in a long time is really hard for several reasons. Um, I think number one, you are not used to like the in person mannerisms that come from like in person conversations. um, you have these like non-verbal cues to consider that you maybe haven't had if you've been having all of your meetings over Zoom, like Catherine said. So I think learning to speak while still reading people's cues can be very uncomfortable. I know, for instance, like if I'm talking and then I can tell someone kind of gets like distracted, they look at their computer or they're just like not as engaged. That makes me start to feel self-conscious about like how I'm talking, how my speech sounds, or if the content of what I'm saying is interesting. So that's just one kind of example, but having those like nonverbal cues and just like general mannerisms to get used to again, they can be hard. And I think the second thing is specifically introducing yourself to people, new people. I personally have a hard time introducing myself, and I have the hardest time if I want to walk up to someone and say, like, "Hi, my name is Ariel. I work in the marketing department, blah, blah, blah." For me, that's the hardest thing to do because I feel like it's putting all of my insecurities on display. I know I'm going to block or struggle when I say my name. And when I block and struggle, I might show those secondary beha- behaviors, like I mentioned, that are just uncomfortable to feel and probably also uncomfortable to look at. Um, I'm also risking that person feeling uncomfortable because they don't know how to respond to someone who is having a hard time saying their name. So I think it's just like a really big risk for me to take introducing myself to people. And um, I think the best way that I've kind of gotten more comfortable with it is to just accept the fact that it's going to be different. It's going to be a bit more struggle than you're used to, and that's okay. Um, I think the main goal is like you don't want to hold back from saying what you want to say. You don't want to feel restricted in a sense as far as when and how you can speak. Um, So I think accepting that it's going to be hard if you are introducing yourself, whether you choose to walk up to the person or they initiate a conversation with you, accept that you might stutter. It might be an uncomfortable feeling for 5, 10 seconds, but it is going to pass. And what would be more uncomfortable is if you completely avoided talking to people or introducing yourself to someone and you came off really cold and like, you know, unengaged. Um, I think the consequences of not taking these risks can be far greater than taking a risk and showing uncomfortable struggle and just having to like suffer in that awkward moment for 5, 10, 30, hopefully not 30 seconds because that would feel like an eternity. But I think you get my point. Just learning mannerisms and how to communicate face to face and introducing yourself can be hard, but I think it's so much better to accept those uncomfortable, awkward moments that might come along and put yourself out there and talk rather than coil back in your shell. And I think that is going to be much more awkward.
Wow, wow. I love that, Ariel. I really, really love that approach. And I and I know for me, one of the instances where I just I stutter more significantly than not is during interviews. And for a long time, I was trying my best to, when going into an interview, I was trying my best to just don't stutter, don't stutter, don't stutter, don't stutter. And there came a point where I just had to accept, you know what, I am going to stutter more than I expect, and it's gonna happen. It's just the way it is. However, I want to say the things that I want to say in order to share my skills and my talents with the people I'm interviewing with. So anyway, that's one instance where I can relate to what you shared, even though it's a different situation. So my next question is going to be for Annabelle, and it's the same question but with a twist. So, what can be particularly uncomfortable and awkward about working one on one with clients as a person who stutters? And in your experience, what have you done to overcome or to mitigate those things?
Okay. Mm, So for me, specifically, when I get a new client, from the first phone call, I usually self disclose, telling them how I stutter, what may happen, and that they do not need to speak for me. Um, and then during the first meeting, I remind them of what I tell them, because because hearing someone block through the phone is very different than having a face-to-face conversation and seeing that block itself, because someone could perceive it as you could be possibly having a panic attack, or you could be possibly having a heart attack. So I just try to remind them so that they know what, the way that a conversation with me will go. So for me, for in person, my first priority is to keep eye contact, because I realize that when I see that the person is looking at me and is patient waiting for me to speak, I feel more comfortable to keep going. So I don't need to look away, um, for fear that they're not listening and that I am stuttering too much or taking too long to speak. So I also try to use verbal cues. I mean, mm, I mean nonverbal cues, because depending on your posture, the person could lose interest in what you're saying because they don't think that it has any validity because you don't seem confident saying it, or you don't seem that you believe in what you're saying. So they could zoom out because even with in person meetings, a person can zoom out like really fast if you don't keep them engaged. So first, to keep a correct posture, to like show that you want to convey a message, so like you can lean in a little bit closer while you're giving the conversation, because then they know that what you're saying needs to be heard, so they will pay more attention to you. And then one more thing too, for me, using your hands does help because when you need to describe something or list something, the person that is talking face to face with you is more willing to pay attention, because they will more likely remember it when you list the information, because they will be because they will be listening to what you're saying. So one thing that can sometimes hinder your in-person meetings or communication is having a mask, because your voice get muffled. So when you say something once fluently and then the person that's right next to you or right in front of you doesn't hear it and you have to say it again, it is in that moment that your speech decides to, throw your curveball. And then you need to be able to say it again with the same confidence, because since the person can't see that you're struggling, so sometimes I've had instances that the person will text me, "Are you done talking?" Because even when I'm doing this, you can't see it because of the mask. So I have been really trying to like show non-verbally that I'm still trying to speak, so 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 that they can pay attention to me. But sometimes having a mask can be beneficial because they do not see the secondaries that you could do with your mouth. Um, so it so it has pros and cons. Um, but the but the but the best thing that I would say to do would be to keep the eye contact, because the person wants to know that what you're saying is what they want to hear, and they want to have that relationship with you, even if you're not verbally saying it, but just showing them that you are focusing on them. It makes them more willing to be patient, and then they are less likely to even speak for you even when you don't self-disclose, because they see that you're here, that you're paying attention to them, and that you're trying to say something. So that would be the very first thing that I would encourage everyone to try to work on, if anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Annabelle. Thank you. That was well said. I'm a huge I'm a huge believer in eye contact as well. And that at one point that was my biggest secondary behavior. I used to always avert my eyes like this every time I had a block or a repetition, and it's a- and it took some work to overcome it. You know, it was scary at first, but now I think I've improved upon it, and it's made a huge difference in my life personally. So thank you for sharing. My and my last question that I want to ask the panel before we go into audience Q and A's for Catherine. Now, so at this point right now, if you have any questions in your mind, just keep them there, or you can add them to the chat, and we will try to get to them in a moment. So for Catherine, I want to know about how it's like in the vir- virtual environment. So the same question: what can make virtual Zoom interactions at work most awkward or difficult for a person who stutters? And in your experience, what have you done to overcome or to mitigate those things?
Yeah. Well, well, I'll, w- w- well, I'll, Zoom, Zoom is more, or, 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 shy, 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 Alan, shy, Alan, Jing, ing, ming, ing, 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 I, 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 in general, and and I m, 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 my I I I I I I I specific zoom 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 and environment and 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 happens to be the 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 doubly the challenging because as 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 nobody he looks at the chat and 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 nobody he turns their 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 cat 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 cameras on, so it's voice only, and uh, 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 and my I I I I my I two 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 main ein ein strategies are to to be 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 uh 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 assertive and not uh, uh, and 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 not and not let at 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 the people people interrupt you, and if that at 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 means say saying a few 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 harsh harsh phrases that, and so be it. And the 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 second and and uh, and 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 uh, second second strategy is to be so that that um damn good 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 at or 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 job at 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 nobody can 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 mistake you for being 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 less con, con, competent. So in other words, herds, 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 herds have all of the necessary the 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 fact facts at 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 your fi- fingertips and 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 work 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 very very hard 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 on 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 be being uh, 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 and excellent writer. Uh, be 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 because there's there's there there's 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 so so much more or to good 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 communication skills than just talking.
Amen to that, Catherine. I love how you ended with that. I think a lot of times we get hung up that, especially as people who stutter, we forget the fact that a lot of communication has to do not with the words that that are coming out of your mouth, and or the words that we're saying, and to focus on the things that we can control. And one of those things that we can control, like you mentioned, is how good you are at your job, um to increase your skills and and competency. So I love how you touched on those things. So now we'd like to open it up to the audience, and I know we're and I know and I know we're a bit over our time. Uh,
Blame me.
no, 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 no. We had a lot of really good input from all of our panelists. So absolutely not. It's good that we got the time to hear from you, because that's what we all had wanted to do. So I don't see anything in the chat yet. So I'm going to go with the raised hand.
Mhm.
And I see that Brian Gomez has his hand raised. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, Brian, and you can go ahead and ask your question to our panel. There we go. You should okay, perfect. There you go.
Thank you. Please let me know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Before I ask my question, I have to say that this was my first time in a meeting with other people who stutter. It was amazing and enjoying it a lot. Uh, it was kind of amazing listening how each of the panelists they stutter in a different way, but they were always like enjoying. At the end, I was thinking like, whoa, we are all unique because even though we all stutter, we do it in different ways, and I think that's part of who we are. Um, thank you, thank you, my guys. Sorry, but as you may notice, English is my second language. I'm still learning, so if you don't understand something, you can ask me. It's okay. My question is, do you think it is always okay to disclose it in a job interview? I'm asking you because I'm from Dominican Republic, and in my country, basically nobody talks about stuttering. It's not like in USA that you have campaigns and all of that. So when I'm in my job interview, I know it is important to disclose it, to talk about your story, but I am like scared because I don't know how they're gonna think. So, do you think it is always okay to disclose it in a job interview?
The- the- Thank you for the question, Brian. That's an important one. That really is an important question. So panel, if any of you would like to chime in, please go ahead.
Yeah, we have well, before I answer, I want to say I am so glad that you were able to join us tonight. I always love hearing when people say that, you know, meetings like these are the first time they've been surrounded by so many people who stutter. And it just like warms my heart so much because it's such a good feeling to be around people who understand exactly what it's like and share your struggles. So really glad that you're here. And I think it's perfectly okay to tell people in your interview that you are a person who stutters. Um, I won't go into a huge rant because we have all kinds of resources about stuttering and advertising your stutter in job interviews. Um, our committee has a mock interview resource where we can essentially give you a mock interview if you are looking to get practice with sharing your stutter or just like speaking in an interview style with someone. I'll post information about that in the chat and you can check it out. But I think all of us here on the panel are pretty big advocates for doing what makes you feel the most comfortable in an interview, whether that's sharing that you are a person who stutters at the beginning or work it in throughout the interview, or if you just feel more comfortable allowing yourself to stutter, that is perfectly okay too. Again, my personal opinion is it's just all about what makes you feel the most comfortable and confident at that time.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Ariel. Well said.
So for me, I would say that it is good for you to self disclose your stutter because I am from Haiti, so I was raised there until I was 9, and then I came here, so I understand what you're kind of going through with no one speaking about stuttering and it being very taboo. But by being the first one to speak, you never know how many people you can help. Because within the Caribbeans, um, there's a lot of us who stutter, but because we don't talk about it, it is not acknowledged. But for a job interview, you can say that you stutter, but then show the benefits of you stuttering, that you are a better listener, you are a better communicator, you are able to relate to more people, you are more patient, because that will show you that you have something that others don't. Because for your, I don't want to say flaw, but for what is different, unique from the other people, then you could be able to relate more. You could be able to make more connections, because you're also struggling through something, and you never know, probably your potential boss or like your potential manager could have someone in their family that stutters, and they hire you because they can relate to you, or that because they've had experiences. So it's never bad to say that you stutter, in my personal opinion, because you never know what anyone is going through. The worst thing that they can do is tell you no, but then you can always apply to more jobs, because there are always different opportunities there. So the person that said no may not be for you, and then the person that said yes could be the job that you needed, and the community and the people that you do need. But just like Ariel said, we're all in a different journey, and the most important thing is to do what feels most comfortable and most honest for you.
Very well said, Annabelle. Good, good. Thank you for your response. Um,
I, I, I,
yes, Catherine, go.
I, 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 I li, list my I I I I I in involvement with the stuttering community. He 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 mama I I I resume be 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 because it 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 shows my I shows my le- leadership roles and it also oh tells them um 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 right 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 I tap uh 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 run and that I'm that I'm that I'm not uh 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 ashamed of being a person who stutters.
Yeah, that's another great that's another great strategy right there is to put it on your resume, and just get it out right in the very beginning so that when you get into an interview, it's not a big surprise or a big built up in your mind, right? To have to to have to worry about. So, and so thank you, thank you to the panel, and thank you to the panel for providing your input to Brian's question. I think each of you had something really, really valuable to say. I know we're running even more over time. However, I did just want to make one more last call to our remaining audience to see if anybody else has a last question that they wanted to ask.
My cat is Zoom bombing us.
Yeah. Hi, John. I see you have your hand raised. Please go ahead.
I just wanted to bring up in my last job interview that I had, when I brought up the fact that I stuttered, which made me feel more comfortable. My new boss said that he had a good friend that stuttered and said, that's okay. And that made me feel so much more at ease that, he said, that's no big deal. And that really did help me with that job interview. And in fact, I got the job. So I think that probably made me feel much more comfortable.
Nice, nice. Happy to hear that story. Uh, Thank you for sharing. Um, at one point, as I had shared earlier, interviews were one of the instances where I would stutter the most, and I never thought I never thought up until not that long ago that it was okay to disclose the fact that you stutter, that it was a good idea. And once
I
again,
always,
go ahead, please.
well, I always thought that it showed weakness, and that was something I did not want to show. So I would start to talk, and I thought, wow, they're looking at me like, what's wrong with that guy? So I really felt like a recruiter said, you should be upfront with them. Let them know that right up front. Hey, I do stutter. I hope you don't have a problem with that. It doesn't affect my job performance. And I just wanted to make sure you do that. He said that that would make them feel much more comfortable and that they wouldn't be going, wow, what's wrong with that dude? So it did. It made me feel a lot more comfortable, I thought.
Yeah, and it did for me too. You know, and especially if you do it in such a way that conveys confidence in the fact that you aren't
Oh, yeah.
ashamed of it, because that's going to reflect in your audience. Then they're going to feel at ease, and then they aren't going to be like, oh well, this guy, he stutters. It's more of a, oh, he stutters, and he's also has, or he or she, excuse me, um has his qualifications, you know, and experience. They really stand out. So
Sure.
yeah, absolutely. So I know we're at the end of our time here. I want to thank everybody in attendance, and thank you to everybody who stuck it out by staying on a little late. I know that it's getting late for you East Coast folks out there. So I just want to thank everybody again for attending, and a big thanks to each of our panelists. I think all three of you had some really insightful and impactful words of wisdom and experiences that you were able to share with us tonight. So thank you very much. And real quick, as our panel, and as was alluded to in the chat, one of our biggest resources that we offer is our mock interviews. If any of you out there have an interview that's coming up, or you are in or you're in the hunt for a job and you're expecting to have interviews coming up, and you want some practice, or you want to learn a little bit more on self-disclosure, how to self-disclose in an interview, when to do it, and why is it a good idea, or if you just want to practice and get some of the jitters out, please use the link that Ariel had included in the chat, and you can schedule a mock interview with one of the members of our committee, and we're going to help you ace that interview. So thank you everybody for attending. I'll let everybody go. Have a great night.